Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunleavy. That is my co-host, Rob Dunham.
I promise not to take my nap until this podcast is over.
Let's hope. Let's hope. Solo podcasts are not as much fun. All right. We have an excellent show for you. We are going to break down the box office as always. We are going to handicap the Best Picture nominations, and we will rank the Best Picture winners of the 1990s. That should be fun. All right. Of course, we'll do our watch list too. Can't forget that. Are you ready to get started?
I am ready, but I'm also very distraught that the 1990s were 35 years.
It is true. It's certainly true that, yes, if we're going the whole way back to 1990, that was a long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Pretty much. It really does feel like when you
Please don't sue us, Disney.
Yeah, that's true. However, if you want to sponsor us, we'll talk about it.
Sure. I hear advertising on our podcast would be a big plus.
All right. Well, let's get started with last week's box office. Interesting results. Number one, Bob Marley, One Love, $28.65 million. Now, this one, along with number two's Madam Web, both came out Wednesday on Valentine's Day. So their total for including Wednesday was $46.5 million for Bob Marley, One Love. Madam Web finished number two, clocked in at $15.3 million, had a 6-day run of $23.5 million. So for less than a week, we're talking 46.5 and 23.5 for those two in their first week in the box office. Argyle finished number three, and this is its third week in the box office. It did $4.88 million, $36.6 million total in the 3 weeks that one has been out. Migration finished fourth after finishing fifth the week before, so it climbed back up the rankings.
You could say it migrated.
Interesting number here. Yes, you could say it migrated up the charts. Yes, you could say that. $3.8 million, plus 30% from previous week. So that's pretty rare.
Yeah,
when you see a movie that's been out as long as Migration has been out, all of a sudden increase 30% from one week to the next. It is up over 114, almost to $115 million. And rounding out the top five, and we didn't talk about this last week because I didn't realize this was a different thing. The Chosen season 4, episodes 4 through 6.
Yes,
I did not realize that they put the second set of episodes out in the theaters. They did
episodes 1 through 3, and now they're doing 4 through 6. Yes.
And for the second time in a row, it debuts its episodes, and they come in at number 5. $3.6 million. These came out earlier in the week as well, and $4.38 million for the 6-day run there. Interesting.
Yeah.
This is 5 days, but whatever. 5-6 day run. What do you make of the box office? Interesting results.
I would not have predicted these two movies, meaning Bob Marley and Madam Web, to be the ones that broke the kind of really underperforming opening weekends. I mean, it's not like, Bob Marley more than Madam Web obviously had an impressive opening. I can't say that in any universe I expected the Bob Marley movie to make over $40 million in its first 6 days.
Yeah.
Apparently there are a lot more people who love Bob Marley than I anticipated.
Yeah, I think you have to be really happy with Bob Marley. If you're the producers of that particular film, you have to be happy with the results. That's been one of the better openings we've seen for a while, especially for a non big release. But even the big releases haven't been doing well lately. And so, yeah, I'm looking up what the budget on this film is. I'm guessing it wasn't tremendously because
Yeah,
this is not a film that
it doesn't look like it would have a lot of production costs, and it didn't necessarily have a huge name actors attached to it
yeah.
either.
I'm trying to find the budget. I can't. It's not in the normal place that it was in. Uh, but even worldwide it did 85 million
Wow.
in worldwide so
Yeah.
far. So that's pretty impressive. And really good result for that. So I think you have to be pleased if you're the producer, if you're a Bob Marley fan, then definitely definitely props on this one. This is the one of the first surprises of the year, I would say,
Yeah.
in terms of the box office of how well a movie is done. We've had movies go the other way,
Yeah,
and be surprised, but this is the first one on the positive side.
Yeah.
I think we've been surprised with. I wonder what week 2 is going to look like
Yeah.
for this. What do you think?
it's really hard for me to say because I was not expecting this number to begin with. So, does it have a really strong word of mouth and not a huge drop off, or is it so strong because everyone who wanted to see it saw it
Yeah.
the first week and now it's gonna take a nosedive? I don't know.
One other highlight I want to mention on this, we talked about one of the debuts from last week was Land of Bad. Land of Bad with Russell Crowe, both Hemsworth brothers, which nobody knew about and they never promoted whatsoever, finished 10th at the box office in its opening week, did 1.6 million.
Wow.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand what they were doing with this film. Like, how do you not promote a film that has those actors in it? Like,
They must be a bad.
the only thing I can think of is they think it's just horrible and they're like, well, we'll just throw it out there and see what it does. But I mean, we'll get to this. Adam Webb is horrible. But they still promoted the heck out of that one. I'm just surprised that that's where it's done. The box office overall did significantly better this week than it did previous weeks. So there was more money overall at the box office. More people went to the theaters this weekend than last week. Any other thoughts on the on top 5?
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much of a surprise outside of the top of the box office.
Yeah. All right. Next, we have opening this weekend. And we have 3 movies that are opening this weekend. And the first of which is Drive Away Dolls. So Drive Away Dolls is the new Coen Brothers movie. And this one stars Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan. That is definitely not how that's pronounced, but it is what it is.
Bless you.
And the plot here is Jamie regrets her breakup with her girlfriend while Marion needs to relax. In search of a fresh start, they embark on an unexpected road trip to Tallahassee. Things quickly go awry when they cross paths with a group of inept criminals.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like I said, this one is directed by Ethan Coen. So we get another Coen Brothers movie.
Well, it's a Coen brother.
A Coen brother directs it, but I think both Coen brothers are involved in it.
Fair enough.
So next up, we have Ordinary Angels. And this stars Hilary Swank and Alan Ritchson. Alan Ritchson being the guy who plays Reacher in the Amazon Prime series, I believe, Reacher. Really large individual. And he's been in other movies as well. He was in the last Fast and the Furious movie as well. But this was inspired by the incredible true story of a hairdresser who single-handedly rallies an entire community to help a widowed father save the life of his critically ill young daughter. So that is Ordinary Angels. And next we have an anime movie, and that is Demon Slayer. Make sure I get the right one because there's a whole bunch of these. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, which I think to the Hashira training is what that means, I think. And so we got anime, and this is Tanjiro undergoes rigorous training with the stone Hashira, Himenjima, I think that's the name, in his quest to become a Hashira. Meanwhile, Muzan continues to search for Nezuko and Ubuyashika. So I don't know what any of that means. It's another animated movie. Apparently, this is a series, the Demon Slayer series. There's a number of movies that came out. There was one that came out last year. I believe it's a continuing storyline. We have seen anime movies pick up in the box office over the last couple of years. So that's why I included it. What do you make of the three movies? Ordinary Angels, Drive Away Dolls, Demon Slayer.
I can't really say that I want to see any of them. Although I'm a fan of the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, so I might watch that eventually. Drive Away Dolls has some really cool movie posters. I will say that. But
it does.
Beyond that, I don't really. There's nothing that's really drawing me to any of these three. Movies.
Trivia question: Margaret Qualley stars in Drive Away Dolls. Do you have any idea who her famous mother is?
I did know this because she was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
She was.
And oh gosh, because I knew this when I saw that movie, because I talked about it.
If I knew this, I did not remember it until recently.
Uma Thurman.
No.
Oh, who is it?
That's Maya Hawke.
Maya Hawke.
Maya Hawke is Uma Thurman's kid.
So who is Margaret Qualley?
Andy McDowell.
Okay.
And now, having just seen Groundhog Day again recently, I can't unsee that. They have very, very similar faces.
Yeah. Thinking about that, I can certainly see it in my mind now.
Yeah. I mean, there are individual elements from Drive Away Dolls or Ordinary Angels that I would be interested in. I like Alan Ritchson. I think he's a good actor. He's not just an oaf. I like him. Drive Away Dolls, of course, being a Coen Brothers movie, I'm intrigued at what mayhem they get up to. But there are other elements of each one of those that I'm like, I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know if I will see any of those and I don't do anime. So that's just not my style.
You're not animated.
No. I don't particularly like the animation style of Japanese anime. So we'll see. There's still some other ones. I had been intrigued by The Beekeeper. Still haven't gotten around to that one. That one's still around. Some of the other ones. So I don't know. I will probably see something in theaters over the next week. I just don't know exactly what it is. Okay, that's it for the box office update. And now let's move to our discussion questions. So first off, we are going to land the plane with our handicapping of the Oscar nominations. And this week, of course, we will do Best Picture. And we'll talk about some of the movies, and we'll talk about our thoughts and what we think the Academy will do, what we would do, and all of those good things. So Best Picture nominees are as follows: American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. Number of years ago, they switched from 5 movies to 10. And so you have a larger pool of nominations. All right, just off the top, how many of these have you seen?
Oppenheimer, Barbie. I think that might be it.
So I haven't gotten to The Holdovers yet, huh?
I have not seen The Holdovers.
Okay.
Yet. And I have not seen Killers of the Flower Moon.
Okay.
And I have not seen Anatomy of a Fall. I have not seen American Fiction. I haven't seen Zone of Interest. I haven't seen Poor Things yet.
One of the things we talked about with this, and one of the things that's made it harder, even for those of us who want to see these movies, is that American Fiction, American Fiction, Poor Things, Zone of Interest, and some of the other ones were all in the theaters around the same time at the end of the year and into the new year. So it's very hard to get around to seeing all of them in the theater at the same time. And there's a gap where there's no streaming options for these movies yet because they're kind of still in theater. So that makes it really hard for the average moviegoer to have any connection with a lot of these movies because it's, we would probably represent the 1% of people who go to movies.
Yeah.
How is the average person supposed to have any connection to these movies when many of them came out so late in the year, and you would have to go to the theater like at least once a week to be able to catch some of these in time. And there's probably some of the other ones you missed.
And I mean, some of these movies, obviously, one being Barbie, are not real contenders. They just expanded the field to 10 to include some, if you want to say, populist movies.
Yeah.
And this would obviously be the most definitive version of that.
Similar to Top Gun
a
few years ago. Like it was nominated and its nomination was its reward.
Yeah.
That's what they gets to claim. Hey, it was nominated for an Oscar. That's its reward. It's never going to win.
I don't take issue with it. I think it's good they do that, but they're never going to win.
And I think this is a good time for that state of the Hollywood discussion we tend to get into. We're going to get to our review of the 90s movies. Like if movies like this were put out in the 90s, they would be legitimate contenders to win. They would be. Like Barbie would be a legitimate contender to win Best Picture given where the state of Hollywood was in the 90s. And that's just the way it was. It would have been. Whereas I agree. I don't think it has a lot of chance. Now, would Barbie have been? I think the expansion of these what it should have been, expanding from 5 to 10 should have been, is the opportunity for some of the smaller films to get in there and get some name recognition where people might not have seen them, and it gives them more exposure. What we've actually seen is the reverse, where all the ones with no exposure get nominated, and then they expand the field just to get the popular ones some token nominations. I do think it's an issue that, I mean, just on your guess, like the average moviegoer, how many of these movies do you think the average moviegoer has seen?
1 to 2.
Yeah. Barbie and Oppenheimer. Yeah. And maybe one of the other ones like The Holdovers or Maestro, or even maybe Past Lives, because they're on popular streaming services. So maybe you got around to one of those. So I would say max 2 to 3. What do you think, like broader picture, what do you think it means that almost none of your average moviegoers have seen the majority of these movies? What do you make of that?
I don't think they care. Like I just don't think the Academy cares. I don't think the Academy feels like they're in the business of being popular. I think they almost wear it as a badge of honor that they're questioned, which is stupid. I think I think this movement to 10 was very begrudgingly done. Like I'm sure there are a bunch of people in that organization who very much look down their nose at some of the movies that are included because of the expansion to 10. I'm sure there are some in that group that look down their nose at Oppenheimer, which is absurd.
Yeah.
Just because it made money.
Yeah.
Art is incredibly subjective thing, and I think they have held it hostage, held their stand. They've made their standard the standard in such a way that it's holding the industry hostage, or holding the art hostage. If that makes any sense.
And I think like it's a sign that Hollywood does not make movies, for the most part. It does not make movies that the average moviegoer wants to see. Movies of quality that the average moviegoer wants to see. Like, yeah, they'll throw you a bone and throw out a Fast and the Furious movie, which will make a bunch of money and people will go see, or they'll throw out another Marvel movie because they think people will go see it. But making good movies that the average moviegoer wants to see, they're not interested anymore. And they're totally fine with making and nominating niche movies that nobody's ever heard of and have a hard time tracking down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I would say on the benefit is I think this is a much stronger list of movies than what we've seen in previous years.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the quality of the movies that they've nominated is higher than the quality has been previously. And we'll get to some of these movies in a second, but it's still a fact that almost nobody has seen most of these.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with it expanding from 5 to 10, most people aren't going to bother trying to track down most of them to watch them. So I think there is some. I don't necessarily know that going from 5 to 10 was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because even us, it's been hard to track down some of these movies
to
be able to watch them and be able to get it done. So, okay. When it comes to the movies, I haven't seen American Fiction, and I don't know that I'm going to get around to seeing it. It's been trailing out of the box office in the last week or two. I've been possibly interested in going, but it's been playing in the afternoons.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working. Anatomy of Fall, we've talked about this. I think is very much a worthy film, and it's certainly worth it. I mean, Barbie made $1 bazillion,
Mm-hmm.
and people love it. I think it was overrated, but I can understand nominating it. I mean, you make the most money of any movie in a year. There's probably a good chance you can be in that list. The Holdovers, I think, is an excellent character drama. I think there's a much better chance that it wins for Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor than it does for Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's good enough movie to warrant being included on the list. Killers of the Flower Moon, again, still have not gotten around to that one. Its runtime is really anytime I sit around and think about should I try and watch this one or not, it's the runtime gets me.
Yeah.
And we've talked about my issue with movies that are over a certain length, especially over 3 hours. Maestro, I think I will get to before the Academy Awards on March 10th. I think I will get around to that one. And same thing with Past Lives. That's on my list. Oppenheimer. I mean, we've talked extensively about the glories of Oppenheimer and how good it is. Poor Things, we'll see. I don't know if I'll get around to that, but it has lots of hype around it, especially for Emma Stone in Best Actor or Actress. And those who I know who have seen it have said it is bizarre. It's different and original and bizarre.
Sounds a lot like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, it does. However, I don't know that it has the same momentum Everything Everywhere All at Once has had at the time. Because that one became an indie box office sensation where that was largely driven by word of mouth and people actually went to go see that in theaters. I don't think you're seeing the same level of buzz for Poor Things. It did stick around the box office for a while, in part because it was tailing off on its run right when the nominations came out. So then people kept it around a little bit longer. And Zone of Interest is a very good movie. I talked about that. I got to see that one last week. It's a really powerful movie. It's well done, very interesting. We'll talk about a similar movie that's on our list from the 1990s in a little bit. The difference is I don't think it's worth being on the list, but it's a very niche movie in that it doesn't have the broader appeal to people, but it is a very, very good movie. And so I think it's worthy of being on the list. Favorite.
I mean, I feel in some ways that I'm not qualified to say because I just haven't seen enough of these movies, but I still find it difficult. I find it difficult to believe that despite their proclivities and seeming bias against popular movies, that the Academy will overlook Oppenheimer. I mean, the one thing it does have massively going for it is that it's a character drama based on the historical figure, and the Oscars love that. So, despite the fact that it made a lot of money, it might still be. I think it's still something that they would generally recognize.
It's fascinating with Christopher Nolan how he is kind of a unicorn in being able to bridge gaps that most people can't bridge. A lot of his other previous movies, it was hard to get a big budget action film that is actually a high cinematic quality with high story and still makes a ton of money. And he's able to do that, bridging that gap between the quality of the movie and the story itself with mass market appeal. Like he bridges that gap. And in this case, he bridges the gap between bringing that popular audience to his movie, but creating an in-depth character drama that is a great movie and has fantastic cinematography. So bridging that gap between like the average fan and the Academy is going to be once again one of Christopher Nolan's achievements. So I think if you had to ask me how I think this is going to go down, I would say Oppenheimer is the favorite going in. I think Anatomy of a Fall would be a sneaky second. And then I think you would look to, for number 3 would probably be Killer of Flower Moon or Zone of Interest in terms of where I think the voting would land on that one.
Yeah.
I think if something is going to upset Oppenheimer, I would say it's either going to be Anatomy of a Fall or Killers of the Flower Moon. And the only reason I would think it would be Killers of the Flower Moon is them trying to make a statement more than them trying to evaluate which is the best movie. But I think if I were to say which ones I think, I would say Oppenheimer is the best movie. I would say Anatomy of a Fall, I would rank it 2, and Zone of Interest, I would rank it 3 in terms of the ones I've seen. The rest of them, I believe, were mostly nominated as like, hey, here's your award. But I would expect it's going to be Oppenheimer this year. Yeah, I think that's what it is going in. We will see what happens on March 10th with the Oscar award winners.
Just a couple weeks away.
Just a few weeks away. Now, leading up to that, we thought we'd have a little bit more fun. Last year, we went through and we did a series on breaking down number of years and looking at the Best Picture winners and what else was nominated those years and talking about those before. But I thought we'd rank them. I thought we'd put them in a rank order. And we'd go through and each do our own ranking of the movies that won Best Picture. This week, we're doing the 1990s. So we're going to rank all the Best Picture winners of the 1990s and give you our list. So let's do them 3 at a time.
Okay.
And we can do 10, 9, 8. And like we usually do when someone picks up the first person to mention a movie, we'll talk about where it ranks.
All right. So I have number 10, The English Patient.
Okay. All right. I have The English Patient number 7.
Okay. Just not my kind of movie. There's not much about it that really excites me other than the fact that they made fun of it on Seinfeld.
They did. There's a great movie or a reference.
I need to rewatch Seinfeld soon, I think.
Yeah.
Number 9, I don't know, you might have this one higher. Shakespeare in Love.
I have that in number 9 as well.
Okay. There are some things about this movie going for it that I appreciate because I do like well done period drama. I do like humorous twist on things. It has some of that. Has romance, has music, but it's not like it just didn't. grab me in the way some other movies have that, are the same kind of thing. So
yeah, this was one that was an upset winner and probably shouldn't have won.
Yeah.
But it did. And I think the only reason why people talk about it in any capacity is because it did win Best Picture. Like it's just kind of been gone and been a forgotten movie other than the fact that it won Best Picture. So I definitely think that's why it's lower on the list for me. Because it's hard to put it into context, the fact that it really probably shouldn't have won, but ended up winning, and the fact that nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
It's just not a film that's going to live on with its legacy now that we're out, 25 years out from it. And that one, Shakespeare in Love, by the way, English Patient, 1996, Shakespeare in Love, 1998.
Okay.
What's your 7?
So my number 8, I was 10-9. That one 8.
Yes, 8. Sorry.
Unforgiven. It's my number 8.
Unforgiven. By the way, English Patient for me was number 7.
Okay.
Or 8. Sorry.
Yeah.
I did it again. Okay. What was your number 8?
Unforgiven.
Okay.
Obviously really good Western, but that's not really like it's not like in one of my top 4 or 5 genres. So it's just not high on my list.
I had Unforgiven at number 7.
Okay.
I actually had it number 7.
Okay. The actual number 7.
Number 10 for me was Titanic.
Okay.
There's something with me and James Cameron movies where he puts out a movie, everyone goes to see it, and then I sit around and say, why?
Yeah.
And Titanic was another one of those movies, very similar to any of the Avatar movies, where I'm like, okay, why does everyone want to go see this movie? It was a cultural phenomenon. And I was old enough when it came out in 1997. I did go see it in theaters. It was one of those things where like everyone was playing that song at the dance for the slow dance part in middle school or whatever, I think it was in middle school at the time. So there was a cultural phenomenon element to it, but not remotely historical, other than the fact that there was a boat named the Titanic and it did happen to sink. I just don't love it.
So I don't really wonder why people want to see it, but I do wonder why people want to see it like 5 times.
Yeah.
I actually have it ranked number 5, and really not because I love the movie, just because
you don't like the other ones.
What you mentioned about cultural significance, I think it's arguably one of the biggest cultural movies of the 90s, if not the biggest.
Sure.
So I just have it ranked a little higher just to recognize that, not necessarily because I think it's a great movie.
And that's the nice part about lists, is we can rank them however we want based on whatever we want. And so my somewhat personal bias against James Cameron seems to come out in this one.
Yeah.
Number 9, like you, I had Shakespeare in Love, and I talked about why. English Patient I had at number 8. I did watch The English Patient not that long after it came out. There were aspects of it that I liked, but it was so long. And it was just like, it did feel like it was dragging on. It does have some period piece elements to it, but yeah, just the relational back and forth was like, that's one of those that kind of sticks with its year and is very time bound in its year and is not a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
All right. What did your next 7, 6, 5?
So number 7 is very controversial because honestly, like I just have it number 7 because it bums me out. So I don't really want to watch it again. That's Schindler's List.
I get that.
Because objectively, it's a masterpiece. You can't argue that.
Oh yeah.
But since this is my personal list and I get to do what I want and why I want, that's why. There's an aspect of this that I think because of the source material, there are simply a lot of people who will not ever watch the movie.
Yeah.
And when there is a scenario like that, for me, that impacts its significance.
Yeah.
But it can't be argued that it's a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
That's why I have it where I have it on my list.
Yeah. It's one of the best movie depictions about the Holocaust. And showing you the horrors of the Holocaust and doing it in a personal way. And So from that aspect, it is a great film. But you're all right. Like you're not going to sit down and watch this a bunch of times. You're just not.
Yeah.
By nature of it. And that's one of the things I would say, just going back to one of the things I would say about Zone of Interest is I felt like Zone of Interest had some similarly powerful images and metaphors without the like, for me, now somebody else might feel very differently. For me, without having the feeling of like, oh, when you're done with it.
Yeah.
You know, now that's not the criticize Schindler's List. I had it at number 4.
Okay. My number 6, Dances with Wolves.
1993, by the way, for Schindler's List.
My number 6, Dances with Wolves.
Okay.
I don't think it's in the same category as what I had as the top 5, so that's why I have it at number 6. But I think it's a really good movie. It's probably Kevin Costner's best movie. I think. I don't know what else you would argue.
I could argue Field of Dreams.
Okay, could. Yeah.
But I would say Field of Dreams has had a bigger impact than these. Maybe it's not his best performance. Yeah. Now, Kevin Costner also directed Dances.
But I think Dances with Wolves probably has a much broader general appeal than Field of Dreams, I would think.
I don't know. I mean,
it's hard to say because Field of Dreams is not just a sports movie. It's a family movie also.
It is. And you even had like MLB started a couple years ago and doing actual MLB games at the Field of Dreams field.
Yeah.
Like that has become like a destination site. So I don't know. I don't know if it has. I mean, if you were born if you're like under 30 years old or under 35 years old, is Dances with Wolves on your list of movies to watch or that you would have come around?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting question.
Yeah.
Maybe we should rank Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Tatanka. That's a Dances with Wolves reference. Yeah. If you have not seen it, you should watch it. Then you'll get it.
Yeah.
Young people. Where did you have Dances with Wolves?
I had Dances with Wolves also at number 6.
Okay. And then I mentioned that already mentioned I had Titanic at number 5.
Yeah. Number 7 for me was Unforgiven for similar reasons to you. I'm just not a big Western guy. Like it was a very good Western. It's a Western that I could watch without being like, I'm watching another Western. It's not my favorite genre of movies, but it is a very good Western. That, and I would say Quick and the Dead are 2 Westerns that I can get into a little bit. So that makes it a good, but it's one of those, it's good enough that it crosses the genre for me and allows me to actually watch it. But because it's a Western, it's not going to rank super high on my list. And number 5, I had Forrest Gump. I understand why people love this movie. I fully understand why people love this movie. I just don't love this movie.
It's kind of funny that you have Forrest Gump at number 5 and I had Titanic at number 5, basically for the same reason.
Yeah, I just don't love this movie. I get it. I do. I honestly do. I get it. I know why. I just don't love it.
I think you know that I do. But yes. I have it at number 3.
Okay.
Gen A.
I'm tempted
I may not be a smart man.
But I feel tempted to quote Tropic Thunder right now. Anyway.
Never once. Never. You're gonna have to watch Tropic Thunder and Forrest Gump to get that reference.
Yes,
you can't say it on the podcast.
I don't want to have to explain it, so that's why I'm not going to say it.
I'm not trying to get fined.
All right. So now we're at 4, 3, and 2. What do you got?
4 for me, American Beauty. I like American Beauty a lot. I think that its its impact and how it's viewed has been unfortunately impacted a bit by Kevin Spacey. Mainly because he plays a really creepy guy in this movie, and then it turned out he was actually a really creepy guy in real life. So for me, I'm like, how much of that was actually acting, Kevin?
Is there a reason why that was a good movie because of that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's just it's very method. He's also mad.
Indeed.
Where do you have American Beauty?
Okay, so I have American Beauty at 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I just said I have Forrest Gump at 3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're gonna be surprised at all that my number 2 is Braveheart.
Yeah.
For me, number 1 and number 2 comes down to a very subjective personal decision on what you like more.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what you're gonna what you're gonna have where, but to me, Braveheart and Silence of the Lambs are the 2 best movies of this decade, without a question. Just my opinion. And the reason why I think that is because I think both these movies are genre defining films. I think that Braveheart is probably the ultimate like war movie when it comes to it's us against them. We need to defend ourselves. We need to fight. We need to survive. I think Silence of the Lambs is the ultimate genre defining horror mystery thriller movie with probably one of the most iconic characters in the history of film.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter. So I guess I just talked about both my numbers. But so that's why I have Braveheart number 2 instead of number 1. But there is absolutely an argument to be made for either one.
All right. So my 4, 3, and 2. 4, I have Schindler's List. More because I think it is a great film that it's not closer to the top because it's not rewatchable. And that's the reason for there. Number 3, I had American Beauty. By the way, Schindler's List, 1993, American Beauty, 1999. And by the way, when I'm saying the years, I'm saying the year they won the award, not the year they came out, because they all came out the year before they won the award. It's kind of weird that that's how it works, but that's how it works. So American Beauty, it's a fascinating film. It is. It's just a fascinating film. And has some really interesting elements, really classic characters. And I look at it overall, it's just a very well put together, very well done film.
Yeah. And I will say, one thing I didn't mention when I was talking about that, I think some of the creative artistic choices in scene selection, shot angle, different effects they used, editing, like all these things go into what Sam Mendes did. And I think there's a ton of creativity in this movie that looking at all of the movies from this decade that won Best Picture, even though I didn't have it higher than I did, I think it's probably the most creative movie on this list. Now, it's not necessarily the most creative movie of the decade.
Yeah.
Because some of the movies that
didn't
probably should have won didn't win.
Yes.
But I think off of this 10 movies we're looking at, it's the most creative.
Yeah. And I would say too, it very much represents the film style of the late 90s. I would say it is a good encapsulation of what good filmmaking looked like in the late 90s. That's one of the things I would say about it, that it does represent that on a number of different levels. Number 2 for me was also Braveheart. Very similar reasons for what you would say. Now, Braveheart is one of those characters. Mel Gibson's portrayal of William Wallace is something that absolutely, it's a film for everybody. But I think men really, really resonated with the character of William Wallace. I think it calls out to some of the best aspects.
Aspects.
I think there's something that resonated with men, like that strength and that resolve and that brilliance. It was an aspirational character from that standpoint. And I think it depends on whether you want to put Gladiator in the same genre as Braveheart, in which case I might give the edge to Gladiator, but I don't think you would have gotten Gladiator had you not gotten Braveheart. And had Braveheart not been as successful as it did, I don't think you would have ended up with Gladiator.
Yeah.
So that's something to say there. And now number 1, Mutual, Silence of the Lambs.
And I have to admit that I kind of thought you would have Braveheart number 1. So why do you have Silence of the Lambs number one? I've already spoken about why I did.
Very, very similar to you in that there's a little bit of personal preference in there, but the character of Hannibal Lecter, the interactions between the glass between Hannibal and Jodie Foster's character, Clarice Starling. Mm-hmm. Those scenes are some of the best like duo shots, like duo scenes of one character interacting with another character. They're just so good. It's so psychological. Like movies that compete on a psychological level automatically get bumped up a notch and really delve into that sort of psychological realm. Really hit at a spot that I really like, and an aspect of film that I really like that you can carry forward. And so I think there's no doubt in my mind that this one matches that criteria and hits that with one of the, like you said, one of the most iconic characters in movie history, and has spawned lots of subsequent both movies and TV shows, and
yeah. And I think this movie, I've talked about this before too, that I feel this movie kind of transcends genres, that it has aspects of mystery, has aspects of thriller, has aspects of horror. So what it does in doing that successfully is broaden its audience.
Yeah.
And I think maybe out of all these movies, this might be one of the most watched ones. Obviously, Titanic is going to be the most watched one on this list, I think. Forrest Gump maybe second. Maybe this would be somewhere 3, 4, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But it's a zeitgeist. Like, people know what it is.
Yeah.
Like you say, Silence of the Lambs. People know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that is one sign that a movie has made an impact on the culture.
And it's fascinating from this aspect too. One of the things you realize is it takes a couple years into a decade for that decade's style to kind of crystallize and materialize. And with Silence of the Lambs coming out in 1990, winning the Best Oscar for 1991, you can really see, if you look at it, you can really see elements of the film that are definitely from the 1980s. The dark cinematography, the kind of lack of illumination on some of this, the kind of graininess of it at times, like feels like a movie from the 1980s. At the same time, that focus on character and that duo interaction is something that became more popular in the 1990s. So it was something that kind of sits at a point. I would still say it leans more towards 80s cinematography and 80s feel and style, but with a twist to it. And so it lands at a really interesting point on this. For me, what's fascinating is the way I ranked my list is I have Silence of the Lambs number 1 at 1991, Braveheart 1995 at number 2, and then American Beauty 1999 number 3. So my top 3 are from the beginning, middle, and end of the decade. I just found that interesting because they all kind of represent slightly different films and how film progressed throughout the decade.
Yeah. And I just realized that we'll have the opportunity, again, going back to time and how it's ridiculous, that we actually have the opportunity to rank the movies from 2010 to 2019 as a whole decade.
That interesting.
It's distressing.
All right. So we'll wrap up that discussion, and next week we'll do the 2000s, which will be fun. Now we'll go to our watch list, and we will talk about the movies we watched this past week. What'd you watch?
So apparently you and I are we very rarely have disagreements of opinion on popular movies.
Okay.
I saw Madam Web also, and I thought it was one of the better stories in a superhero movie I've seen in a while.
Okay.
Because I thought that it was fairly original. I thought that the way they displayed and demonstrated when she was like out of time was creative in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be. Because I think we've seen that done in a lazy way with some recent superhero movies, and I didn't feel that way
Okay.
with this one. And I went into it with incredibly low expectations. And I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was good, and I thought it was not the movie the trailers made it out to be. I felt when I left, I felt the trailers did a disservice to what the movie ended up being, because I felt like they made it look like there was an actual real serious story in the movie that I don't think the trailers hit on at all.
Yeah.
And to me it wasn't just I can see an argument being made because of how the movie goes, that it's too bent towards like the concepts of girl power, etc. But to me, the fact that the main like focus was the girls wasn't so much like because they were girls, because like they were all outcasts in their own way. And I think it resonated with me because it showed that no matter how successful your family is, there's always going to be struggles in your personal life. And I thought that was a very strong message, because I don't think that's shown a whole lot. And I think oftentimes we look at like people who are struggling financially as the people who are worse off. And yet one of these girls, their parents are like hugely successful business people, but they're never around. So like they've all been abandoned in their own way. And I found that like a strong theme, especially because the character herself, played by Dakota Johnson, she thought she had been abandoned. And so I thought there was like, I did feel like an emotional response to her and her interaction with her mom in the one scene where she goes through time. So there have been so many bad superhero movies that maybe I'm just a victim here, or a hostage to it being slightly less bad than some others. But I really did feel there was a story in there when a lot of these movies have not actually done any work to develop a story.
So what I would say is the things you have hit on were the strongest aspects of the film. Dakota Johnson, I thought, for largely was very good in her role. I thought the interaction between her and the girls was very good and genuine, and there was genuine story there. There was genuine interaction there. I thought that was the strongest aspect of the film, is Dakota Johnson and the girls that she's trying to rescue and trying to help out was the strongest aspect in the film. It was, for me, some of the only strong aspects of the film. The first thing I noticed, and you notice this almost literally right from the beginning, is how bad the dialogue is. The dialogue was awful in this movie. It's so bad that I'm like, how did this make it the whole way to theaters with this? The editing was bad. The directing was bad. The main bad guy, I thought his performance was terrible.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of his performance.
I'll give you two examples, but I'll try not to be spoilerish with it. But I'll talk slightly about the movie, but nothing that's going to give away any of the plot. So if you don't want any of it, then skip ahead. But one of the opening scenes, the first scene you see Dakota Johnson's character is in an ambulance. And what they are going for is fun relationship between the partner and her, but you don't have any context for that yet. And someone is like in the back of the ambulance, like struggling to stay alive, and they are joking around about it. And without any context for their characters, it felt like, like, I know what you're doing. You're just doing it badly. Now, could that have been an editing thing where they had a longer part of the scene that would have set that up better and allowed that to feel like you can do a serious scene with joking over top and it feels normal. This did not feel, it feels like, oh, am I supposed to like this character because they're funny, or am I supposed to dislike this character because they're being callous in this moment? And the problem is like that Dakota Johnson's character is kind of both.
Mhm.
And it's like they're trying to do two things with that one scene to set her up, and they're not doing either one of them well. The other scene I'll highlight is after the main bad guy basically seduces this woman and they're back at his place or whatever. Like he wakes up from a nightmare and then he's just like blurts out this whole thing about, what was in his dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're not gonna like that whole interaction just felt terrible and forced and like the ultimate overshare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like his scene partner in there is trying to play along with it, but it's just such a cringy dialogue. And he acts it in a terrible manner. Like his character shows like no emotional range in his acting whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sound like he's a native English speaker. So there could be some language issues as to why he was not able to convey the emotion. But then that's why you like don't cast him in that role.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff just felt like it was not done. The dialogue I thought was just terrible.
Both the scenes you're talking about really like the entire purpose of the scenes was to get to something else.
Yes. They're completely throwaway scenes.
Yeah.
And the one thing that you say, I didn't think the emotional payoff with Dakota Johnson and the mother was as strong as it could have been because they did not set up how Dakota Johnson emotionally felt about the supposed abandonment of her mother.
Yeah.
If they had set that up earlier about how she felt, which they didn't do. They talked about the fact she grew up without a mother, but they didn't really dive into how she felt about it. So the catharsis to me didn't ring true. It was still a good scene. It was a good scene and there was a good emotion to it, but it did not have the punch that it could have had.
I think they set it up asking the audience to supply a lot of their own understanding of what was happening. Yeah. And maybe it's just because I'm more empathetic and a better person. But, it impacted me more than you.
This is the thing is I know what they're going for. The question is like, are they like, you got to set that up properly. Yeah. If you set that up properly, the payoff is going to be so big, but they didn't.
And I will say too that although I did like a lot of how they did the out of time stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I had the same feeling about Argyle with some of the scenes with like where we're switching back and forth between Henry Cavill and Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
That at some point it's like just a little too much.
Yeah, I agree. It was too much.
It's like we understand what you're doing, but like replaying this thing over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Again, like is beating it into the ground.
Right. We got the concept. We understand it.
The bad guy goes, he was great in the not Spider-Man suit. But he showed the same level of emotion out of the suit as he did in the suit, which was no emotion.
Yeah. And I would say too, like the ending scene was really bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dakota Johnson, I thought did a great job with not a lot to work with.
Yeah.
But that last scene, like her emotional affect in that one was very bizarre. And it was like, is she high? Is she still on painkillers? Yeah. Like, what is happening here? And the whole kind of like X-Men thing that they really didn't set up, like Professor X thing that they didn't really set up well at all, was like, wait, what? That's what happened in that moment? Really?
So one issue I have with it, maybe I'm just dumb. There is a character in this movie who is a very important character in something else, and I can't say anything more than that because it will give away what happens in the movie. But they really I don't feel like they made that obvious.
Yeah, they did not.
It took me to the end of the movie when I looked up if there was a post-credit scene and it said no, and then it said some other stuff, and I went, "That's who that was."
I had the same reaction.
Like it's the first name, and like I felt really dumb. Like I should have known that. I should have figured that out. But I don't think they did a good enough job explaining it.
That's why the whole movie, I'm like, I was like, why is it taking place in the air? Like in the time frame it does.
Yeah.
Because the time frame of this movie is the early parts of 1973 and then it's 2003. And I'm thinking the whole time, why does this take place during this particular time frame? And the whole reason for it is that one scene that they didn't really do a good job addressing.
I mean, they have a lot of scenes around it, like they go to this baby shower.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, but why do I care
Yeah.
about this guy's sister's baby shower? And then when the movie's over, you're like, oh, that's why I was supposed to care. Oh, I'm sorry if I've offended any moms or future moms about baby showers. Oh, just kidding. Everyone hates baby showers, according to Ryan's.
So that's just what I was saying. Like now, what I would say about this, if you just want to go relax and have a, turn your brain off and watch the movie, there's enough in there for you to enjoy, and you can just go watch and something. But like, I really found myself saying like the studio didn't care about this movie, the director didn't care about this movie. Just the choices, like it seemed like, okay, you come back to me with this dialogue, and I would tell you, no, this needs to be rewritten. We need something better than this. And the fact that it made the Hoy to theaters were some of the lines of dialogue that were in there, and it's very surprising.
I mean, and the unfortunate, I think you agree with me on this. The unfortunate thing, because it's true, no matter how you and I may feel slightly differently about this movie, is there have been way worse superhero movies in the last decade.
Yes, there have been. It's true.
And that's just the state of things right now.
Yeah. One thing just to clarify for anyone who's not sure, this is not part of the MCU.
Yes,
Madam Web is not part of the MCU.
Marvel.
It is a Sony only. It's not Sony with Marvel. It's just Sony, because Sony still has the Superman license, or Spider-Man license. They've been doing a lot of stuff as joint ventures with Marvel. This is not one of them. So this is Sony only. Apparently, even Sydney Sweeney was not aware of the fact that this was.
I mean, at the beginning of the movie, it shows Sony's logo and Marvel's logo. It's just like Marvel Studios is not involved. In this.
Yeah. Anything else for this week?
I probably watched a few other movies just for fun. But that was the one I went and saw at the theater.
All right. Well, we'll close off with that, with our review there of Madam Web, and let that be the episode ender. Thank you for tuning into Film for Fans, and make sure you check out filmforfans.com and like and tell everyone about the podcast. Until next time, enjoy the movies.